Hi there. Tonight, we're stepping back in time, way back, to a world of opulent palaces, whispered secrets, and intricate power plays. Close your eyes for a moment. Can you feel the cool marble beneath your bare feet? Imagine the scent of exotic spices and blooming jasmine wafting through grand courtyards, punctuated by the distant, rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer from the city beyond. You might just catch the shimmering silk of a eunuch's robe as he glides past, his stern gaze missing nothing. We're talking about the Ottoman Empire, and specifically, a life that was both incredibly privileged and profoundly precarious, that of a male concubine. It's a life you probably wouldn't survive, let's be honest. The stakes were incredibly high, and every day was a dance on a razor's edge. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself, a young boy, perhaps no older than 10 or 12, standing at the threshold of a world utterly alien to anything you've ever known. The air is thick with the scent of rosewater and a quiet sense of foreboding. Your past, whatever it was, a small village in the Balkans, a bustling market in Anatolia, or even a distant land across the Black Seas, now a faint whisper. You are no longer Ismail or Vossel or Georgie. You are simply new. This isn't a warm welcome, it's an induction. The sheer scale of the Topkapi Palace, with its sprawling courtyards, towering walls, and labyrinthine corridors, is overwhelming. It's a city within a city, buzzing with thousands of souls, all revolving around one central figure, the Sultan. Your arrival here isn't by choice, of course. You might have been a gift, part of a tribute from a conquered province, or perhaps purchased from slave markets that teemed with human lives. Historians still argue whether the primary source of male concubines was tribute or purchase, with evidence pointing to both practices being common. This wasn't necessarily a life sentence of abject misery in the way we might imagine slavery today, but it was certainly a life without personal liberty, dictated by the whims of others. You are now property, an asset to be groomed and utilized. Your very existence is tied to the favor of those in power. You glance around, wide-eyed, taking in the intricate Iznik tiles adorning the walls, the soaring arches, and the constant hushed movement of people. Unlike the common misconception that the harem was solely for women, the imperial harem, or harem-i-humayun, was a sprawling complex that housed not just the sultan's female consorts, but also his children, mothers, sisters, and a vast retinue of servants, guards, and yes, male pages and concubines. It was a self-contained universe, a place of immense wealth and profound intrigue, where your every move would be observed, assessed, and potentially judged. One quirky tidbit: the eunuchs, who held immense power within the harem, sometimes accumulated vast personal fortunes, quietly investing in properties outside the palace walls, a kind of ancient 401k plan for the decidedly unfree your stomach. Titans with a mix of fear and a strange, nascent curiosity. This is your new reality, and survival depends on adapting quickly. Your initial days are a blur of new faces and bewildering commands, often delivered in a language you barely comprehend. You are one of many young boys, some even younger than you, all thrust into this grand, intimidating stage. The palace, you quickly learn, is a machine, and you are but a tiny cog. Your previous life, your family, your village, they recede into the background, replaced by the immediate, overwhelming reality of your new environment. This process of severing ties with one's past was a deliberate strategy designed to ensure loyalty solely to the Sultan and the palace. You are to forget who you were and become what they need you to be. The first step in this transformation is often a simple yet profound one, a new name, something Turkish perhaps, or Arabic, chosen for its meaning or simply for the pleasing sound it makes. You are no longer just a body. You are now a vessel, ready to be filled with the knowledge and skills deemed appropriate for your station. This renaming was a common practice for many who entered the Ottoman system, from soldiers in the Janissary Corps to concubines, symbolizing a rebirth into imperial service. You are quickly assigned to a specific part of the harem, a bustling world of activity. Unlike the widespread myth of the harem being a den of idleness, it was a highly organized and productive entity. You might find yourself assisting in the kitchens, learning the intricacies of preparing meals for hundreds, or perhaps in the laundry, where mountains of silk and cotton needed constant attention. Others might be sent to the stables, learning to care for the Sultan's prized horses, or to the gardens, tending to the fragrant blossoms and fruit trees. Your role is initially menial, designed to teach you discipline and observation. Your formal education begins almost immediately. You are not just a servant, you are a student. You'll be taught to read and write, often in Ottoman Turkish, but potentially in Arabic for religious texts, and even Persian, the language of poetry and high culture. This wasn't merely about literacy, it was about acculturation. You learn the Quran, the basic tenets of Islam, and the importance of prayer. This religious instruction wasn't just spiritual, it was also a tool for integration into the Ottoman cultural and social fabric. Beyond academics, you receive instruction in court etiquette. Every bow, every gesture, every nuance of speech is carefully drilled into you. You learn how to address superiors, how to walk with grace, how to maintain a respectful silence. Imagine endless hours practicing your posture, your gait, your very breathing. It's like a never-ending charm school, but with much higher stakes if you fail to impress. Historians still argue whether the education provided to male concubines was primarily vocational or aimed at broader intellectual development, as evidenced by some who became accomplished poets or scribes. You also begin to learn about the palace hierarchy, a complex web of titles, ranks, and unspoken rules. There are the various eunuchs, white and black, who hold immense power, the Khalfa's senior female servants, the Uga's male officers, and of course, at the very pinnacle, the Sultan himself. Understanding who outranks whom, who to defer to, and who might be a potential ally or enemy, is crucial for your survival. It's like a game of three-dimensional chess, played with real lives. You quickly realize that a polite word to the right person can open doors, while an accidental slight can lead to unseen punishments. For instance, did you know that some eunuchs had their own small private businesses operating within the palace, trading in silks or spices? It's true. They managed to keep quite busy and quite wealthy. Outside of their official duties, your days are long and demanding, filled with lessons, chores, and constant observation. You are always being watched, always being evaluated. But amidst the strictness, there are moments of camaraderie with the other boys, shared whispers in the dormitories, and perhaps a quick, illicit game when no one is looking. These small acts of rebellion, these fleeting connections, become lifelines in an otherwise rigidly controlled existence. You are being molded, shaped into something new, something that fits precisely into the intricate machinery of the Ottoman court. With each passing day, the routines of the harem become less alien and more ingrained. Your body aches from the physical training, long hours spent learning to carry heavy trays with grace, to stand at attention for what feels like an eternity, to move silently through the vast corridors. But your mind is just as exhausted from the mental strain. You're constantly absorbing new information, the names of the Sultan's chief eunuchs, the various ranks of the female staff, the complex protocol for every social interaction. This isn't just about memorizing facts. It's about internalizing a new way of life, a new way of being. Your education isn't limited to the practicalities of palace life. You're also taught the arts. Imagine painstakingly learning to play the oud, its pear-shaped body resting against you, your fingers fumbling with the strings until a melody finally emerges. Or perhaps you're tutored in calligraphy, the delicate brushstrokes requiring immense precision and patience. Some boys are trained in poetry, learning to recite verses from Hafiz or Rumi, or even to compose their own. These artistic skills aren't just for personal enrichment. They are a vital part of courtly life, designed to entertain and impress. A performance could catch the eye of a powerful figure, changing your fate in an instant. This emphasis on arts and culture was a hallmark of Ottoman court life, reflecting the empire's appreciation for beauty and intellectual pursuits. You quickly discover that the training is rigorous for a reason. Every movement, every word, every piece of knowledge you acquire is intended to make you a more refined, more valuable asset to the Sultan's household. You're being polished, like a precious gem, in the hope that your brilliance will reflect favorably on your masters. This intense grooming was part of a broader system within the Ottoman Empire, where individuals, regardless of their origin, could rise to positions of great influence if they displayed exceptional talent and loyalty. Historians still argue whether the primary motivation for such extensive training was purely utilitarian or also included a genuine desire to cultivate cultured individuals. One quirky tidbit you observe is the elaborate system of hand signals and subtle cues used by the eunuchs and senior staff. A raised eyebrow, a specific flick of the wrist, a barely perceptible nod. These communicate volumes without a single word being spoken. It's like a secret language, and you quickly learn that understanding these nonverbal cues can save you from a sharp reprimand or even worse. Imagine trying to decipher an entire conversation just from the shift of a shoulder or the tightening of a jaw. It's an exhausting mental exercise. You learn that life within the palace walls is a study in contrasts. There is incredible luxury, the finest silks, the richest foods, the most exquisite jewels, but also an underlying current of strict discipline and constant scrutiny. You sleep on comfortable mattresses, far better than anything you've known before, but your dormitory is shared with many others, and privacy is a luxury you rarely enjoy. You might witness spectacular feasts with overflowing platters of roasted meats and sweet pastries, but you eat your own meals in a more modest setting, always aware of the hierarchy. It's like living in a gilded cage, beautiful but still a cage. Every day, you are reminded that your place here is earned through obedience and utility. The goal of this extensive training is not just to make you a skilled servant or entertainer, but to imbue you with the values of the Ottoman court: loyalty, discretion, and an unshakable deference to authority. You are becoming a person suited for the Sultan's world, shedding the skin of your former self, The boys who fail to adapt, who struggle with the lessons, or show signs of disobedience, simply vanish. You rarely see them leave. They just aren't there the next morning. This stark reality serves as a constant, unspoken warning, reinforcing the importance of mastering every skill, every lesson, with absolute dedication. Above all else, you learn about the eunuchs. They are the true masters of the harem, the ubiquitous, watchful eyes that govern every facet of your existence. You quickly understand that while the sultan is the ultimate authority, it is the eunuchs who wield immediate power within these gilded walls. They are the gatekeepers, the enforcers, and often the silent arbiters of your fate. Their presence is constant, from dawn until dusk, their stern, impassive faces betraying little emotion. This widespread reliance on eunuchs for security and administration was a hallmark of many ancient and medieval courts, including the Ottoman Empire, where they were seen as incorruptible due to their perceived lack of familial ties. There are two distinct groups: the chief white eunuch, typically responsible for the inner service of the palace, managing the pages, and controlling access to the sultan's private chambers, and the chief black eunuch, who often held even greater influence, overseeing the entire harem and acting as a direct conduit between the sultan and his female family members. It's like having two very serious headmasters, each with their own equally serious rules. The Kisla-Akosk, in particular, could amass immense wealth and political power, sometimes rivaling that of the Grand Vizier himself. One quirky tidbit: some of these powerful eunuchs owned vast estates and even maintained their own private armies outside the palace, a testament to their influence and wealth. Their control is absolute and rarely questioned. They dictate your schedule, from your waking hours to your sleeping ones. They supervise your lessons, your chores, even the clothes you wear. Disobedience is met with swift, often severe, punishment, though rarely physical in a brutal sense. More often, it's a loss of privilege, isolation, or a sharp, public rebuke that cuts deeper than any lash. You learn to anticipate their moods, to read the subtle shifts in their expressions, and to move through your day with an almost pathological obedience. It's less about fear and more about a deep-seated understanding of the consequences of stepping out of line. You watch as they oversee the countless daily tasks of the harem. They manage the enormous logistics of feeding thousands of people, maintaining the palace, and ensuring the smooth running of the sultan's household. They are effectively the CEOs of this vast, intricate enterprise. Their knowledge of the palace's inner workings is encyclopedic, and their networks of informants stretch into every corner. Historians still argue whether the eunuchs' immense power derived primarily from their unique physical status or from their unparalleled access to the private lives of the royal family. You might see them conducting inspections, their eyes missing nothing, from a speck of dust on a valuable tapestry to a misplaced cushion in a seating area. Or you might observe them mediating disputes among the female residents, their authority unquestioned as they deliver swift, decisive judgments. They are often the first to know of intrigues or plots brewing within the walls, acting as the sultan's ears and eyes. This makes them both feared and, in a strange way, indispensable. You learn quickly that earning their favor, or at least avoiding their ire, is paramount to your survival and potential advancement. For you, a young male concubine, the eunuchs are your direct superiors. They assign you your duties, they evaluate your progress, and they ultimately decide your fate within the palace. A kind word from a senior eunuch can mean a better assignment, a more comfortable room, or even a chance to learn a more prestigious skill. A scowl, on the other hand, can mean a demotion to less desirable tasks, or worse, being sent away from the palace altogether, a fate that, paradoxically, might be longed for by some, but is terrifying for most who have known no other life. You learn to be constantly aware of their presence, moving with a cautious deference that quickly becomes second nature. It's a bit like trying to impress your toughest teacher, knowing they hold the keys to your entire future. Your days are a constant balancing act, a subtle dance to ascend the palace hierarchy. It's not a ladder with clearly marked rungs, but rather a tangled vine, where every handhold is precarious and every step forward requires careful calculation. You quickly learn that sheer talent, while important, is often secondary to discretion, loyalty, and the ability to gauge the shifting currents of favor. Imagine trying to play a game of chess where the pieces keep changing their allegiances, and the rules are whispered, not written, at the lowest rung. You are a concubine, a page, performing menial tasks and learning the ropes. Your goal is to distinguish yourself, to be noticed for your diligence, your intelligence, or your artistic aptitude. Perhaps you are exceptionally quick at learning languages, or your calligraphy is remarkably precise, or your voice carries a haunting melody. These are the sparks that might catch a watchful eye. Historians still argue whether exceptional beauty or specific talents were more crucial for advancement within the ranks of male concubines. To advance, you need to impress not only the eunuchs, but also the more senior palace officials. A well-placed compliment, a perfectly executed task, or even just a consistent display of humility can go a long way. You learn to observe, to listen more than you speak, and to understand the unspoken dynamics between the various powerful figures. Who is currently in the Sultan's favor? Who is out of favor? Aligning yourself, even subtly, with the ascendant star can be beneficial, but betting on the wrong horse can be catastrophic. It's a very risky form of networking, where your career and possibly your life is on the line. Your interactions with other concubines and pages are also critical. While there's an inherent rivalry, everyone is vying for limited positions and attention. There's also a need for alliances. A fellow concubine who is well connected can offer protection, share valuable information, or simply provide companionship in an otherwise isolating existence. You learn to discern who is trustworthy and who might betray you for a sliver of advantage. It's a bit like being in a super competitive, luxurious boarding school where everyone knows everyone else's business and gossip travels faster than a speeding camel. One quirky tidbit: sometimes male concubines formed lifelong bonds, and if one rose to a position of power outside the harem, he might subtly help his former companions. You witness firsthand the consequences of failure or mischief. A once favored page might suddenly find himself demoted to the kitchens, or worse, exiled from the palace altogether to some distant provincial post. A silent testament to the fleeting nature of courtly favor. This constant threat keeps everyone on edge, ensuring absolute compliance and a fervent desire to please. You understand that your position, no matter how elevated, is always temporary and dependent on the whims of those above you. Your ultimate goal in this intricate game of advancement is to catch the eye of the Sultan or a powerful vizier. This is the highest form of recognition, the true measure of your success within the harem's walls. It means preferential treatment, access to more luxurious accommodations, finer clothing, and perhaps even a future outside the immediate confines of the harem. But it also means increased scrutiny and greater danger. as envy and resentment from those you've surpassed grow with your rise. The higher you climb, the more visible you become, and the more targets appear on your back. It's a tricky tightrope. Walk where the view from the top is breathtaking, but the fall is even more so. Now you've been groomed, educated, and perhaps even mastered a particular art. The ultimate test, the moment that defines your trajectory within the Ottoman court, is the moment you might catch the Sultan's gaze. This isn't a casual glance across a crowded room, but a specific, intentional act of recognition that elevates you above the dozens, even hundreds, of other hopefuls. It's the culmination of all your training, all your silent endurance. Imagine waiting for this moment, a mix of desperate hope and profound terror churning in your stomach. How does it happen? There's no fixed script. Perhaps you are serving during a private meal, moving with a grace that subtly distinguishes you. Maybe you are part of an entertainment ensemble, your voice or your musical skill standing out amongst others. It could even be a chance encounter in a quiet corridor, where your respectful demeanor and intelligent eyes make an impression. The Sultan, a figure of immense power and constant scrutiny, is always observing. He is looking for more than just beauty. He seeks intelligence, wit, and a certain spark that promises companionship, loyalty, and perhaps a pleasant distraction from the crushing weight of his imperial duties. This moment, if it comes, is a turning point. It's the difference between a life of continued servitude in the lower echelons of the palace and the potential for a life of unprecedented luxury and influence. He became one of the Sultan's elite servants, a private chamber page, or perhaps even a favored companion. Your duties shift from menial tasks to more intimate service, assisting with dressing, preparing the Sultan's personal refreshments, reading to him, or engaging in quiet conversation. This direct access, even if fleeting, is where true power lies for a male concubine. Historians still argue whether the Sultan's preferences for male companions were primarily about pleasure, companionship, or a strategic way to cultivate loyalty without the dynastic implications of female consorts. With this newfound favor comes incredible privilege. You would be granted your own, more comfortable, private quarters, perhaps with a view of the palace. Gardens. Your clothes would be made of finer silks and brocades, and your meals would be richer, drawn from the Sultan's own table. You might receive valuable gifts, jeweled daggers, exquisite robes, or even bags of gold coin. It's like being suddenly promoted from junior intern to executive vice president in a blink, with all the perks that entails. But this elevation also comes with immense danger. You are now visible, a target for the envy and resentment of those who were overlooked or those who see you as a threat. Palace intrigue, always simmering beneath the surface, now becomes your immediate reality. You learn to tread carefully, to trust few, and to be constantly aware of the whispers and subtle machinations around you. One quirky tidbit: to avoid accusations of favoritism or undue influence, some sultans would rotate their favored companions, frequently keeping everyone guessing and no one person to secure. It was a kind of high-stakes game of musical chairs. Every interaction, every conversation, every service you perform for the Sultan is a test. You learn to anticipate his needs, to provide comfort without overstepping, and to be a silent, unobtrusive presence when required. The line between being favored and being dismissed is incredibly fine, and a single misstep, a perceived slight, or an accidental revelation of sensitive information could send you plummeting from your elevated position. The air around the Sultan is thin and only the most astute and discreet can breathe there for long. You are walking a tightrope, with luxury on one side and ruin on the other. With the Sultan's favor comes a tangible shift in your daily life. Gifts and favors. These aren't just tokens. They are concrete manifestations of your elevated status, a clear signal to everyone in the palace that you are now part of the inner circle, at least for the moment. Imagine receiving a finely embroidered kaftan, heavy with gold thread, its silk smooth against your skin. A stark contrast to the simpler garments you wore just weeks or months ago. This isn't merely clothing. It's a uniform of distinction. Such luxurious garments were often gifted by the Sultan, signifying his pleasure and acknowledging one's position. These gifts can range from the intensely personal to the subtly practical. You might be given a beautiful piece of jewelry, perhaps, a ring set with a precious stone, or a small, intricately crafted box for your personal effects. More significantly, you might receive sums of gold coin, not enough to make you independently wealthy, but certainly enough to give you a measure of comfort and perhaps even allow you to make small purchases within the palace's internal economy. A unique system that operated with its own rules. One quirky tidbit: some favored individuals were even given permission to purchase slaves or servants of their own, though these would still be under the ultimate authority of the palace. It's like getting a raise and a fancy new office, but you still report to the CEO who lives down the hall. Beyond material possessions, favors manifest in other ways. Your accommodations improve dramatically. You might move from a shared dormitory to a small, private room, perhaps even with a window overlooking one of the palace's serene courtyards or the shimmering Bosphorus. The privacy itself is a profound luxury in a place where you are constantly observed. You might be granted access to the Sultan's private libraries, filled with ancient manuscripts and illuminated texts, or to more exclusive bathing facilities. These are not just perks, they are privileges that underline your proximity to power. Another significant favor is the opportunity to interact more closely with the Sultan. This isn't always about entertainment. Sometimes it's about companionship. You might be called upon to read to him, to discuss poetry, history, or current events. These conversations, though always deferential on your part, offer a unique window into the mind of the empire's ruler. They also provide you with valuable insights into the political landscape, information that could be vital for your own survival and future navigation of court intrigue. Historians still argue whether these close relationships sometimes evolved into genuine affection or remained purely transactional and power-driven. However, these gifts and favors are also a double-edged sword. While they elevate you, they also make you a more prominent target for jealousy and resentment. Other concubines, pages, and even lower-ranking eunuchs might view your good fortune with envy. Whispers can turn into rumors, and rumors can become accusations. Every new gift, every special privilege serves as a beacon, highlighting your rise and potentially attracting the negative attention of those who feel overlooked or threatened. It's a bit like winning the lottery in a small town. Everyone knows your business, and not all of it is good. You learn that expressing excessive joy or pride in your newfound status is a mistake. Humility, even feigned humility, is paramount. You must accept the gifts with gratitude, but without ostentation, understanding that they are not permanent guarantees of favor, but rather a temporary reflection of the Sultan's current whim. Your continued existence at this elevated level depends not just on receiving these favors, but on how you manage the perceptions they create around you. Every new silk robe is beautiful, but it also carries the weight of expectation and potential danger. Despite the shimmering silks and the scent of jasmine, you quickly learn that your life of luxury within the palace walls is inextricably linked to limited freedom. This isn't a paradox. It's the fundamental truth of your existence. You might sleep on plush cushions and eat from silver platters, but you are still, fundamentally, a prisoner of gilded circumstance. It's like being given a private jet, but only being allowed to fly in circles above the same small island. Your movements are constantly monitored. While you might have more autonomy than a common servant, you are still bound by the rigid rules of the harem. There are specific areas you are permitted to access, and vast sections that remain strictly off-limits. You cannot simply wander out into the streets of Istanbul, haggle for goods in the Grand Bazaar, or visit a local tea house. Your world is the palace, a self-contained universe designed to keep its inhabitants close and its secrets tighter. This controlled environment was typical for royal courts throughout history, where proximity to power necessitated strict security and limited personal liberty. Even within the permissible areas, your interactions are observed. Every conversation, every gathering, every seemingly innocent stroll through the gardens is subject to the watchful eyes of the eunuchs and the pervasive network of informants. You quickly develop a sense for who is watching, and you learn to self-censor, choosing your words and actions with extreme care. The walls, it seems, have ears, and those ears often belong to someone who might use what they hear to their own advantage. It's an exhausting way to live, always on guard, always performing. Your daily routine, while perhaps less physically demanding than before, is still dictated by others. You wake when summoned, you eat when served, and you engage in activities as commanded. There's little room for spontaneity or personal initiative. Even leisure activities are often prescribed. A game of chess with a fellow concubine, listening to music, or studying texts from the Sultan's library. These are pleasant diversions, to be sure, but they are chosen for you, not by you. Historians still debate whether the psychological toll of this constant surveillance outweighed the material comforts for those living within the palace. The very concept of a private life, as you might have once known it, is non-existent. Your relationships, your friendships, even your moments of quiet contemplation are all subject to potential scrutiny. You learn to guard your thoughts and emotions, developing an outer shell of pleasant deference that conceals your true feelings. This constant emotional regulation is a survival mechanism, a way to navigate a world where vulnerability can be exploited. One quirky tidbit: some male concubines developed elaborate coded languages or subtle signals to communicate privately, a silent rebellion against the constant observation. You might occasionally glimpse the bustling life beyond the palace walls, the distant calls of street vendors, the rhythmic clang of ships in the Golden Horn, the faint sounds of music or celebration. These fleeting moments serve as sharp reminders of the world you've left behind and the freedom you no longer possess. The irony is not lost on you. You live in unparalleled splendor, surrounded by riches, yet your movements are more restricted than those of a common merchant. Ultimately, your luxury is a gilded cage, and your freedom is its cost. You are provided with every material comfort, but your destiny, your daily life, and your future remain firmly in the hands of the Sultan and his powerful eunuchs. It's a life of constant weighing, the comfort of your present against the yearning for a liberty you may never regain. As a favored male concubine, your days often involve a significant amount of time dedicated to art and entertainment roles. This is where your rigorous training in music, poetry, calligraphy, and dance truly comes into play. You are not merely a servant, you are a performer, a living embellishment to the Sultan's court, expected to entertain and impress. Imagine the pressure of knowing that your performance could either solidify your position or send you plummeting down the ranks. Perhaps your talent lies in music. You might spend hours practicing the konin, its 72 strings echoing through the quiet chambers, or mastering the intricate rhythms of the dub. You play for the Sultan during his private meals, offering a soothing backdrop to his thoughts, or for a select gathering of high-ranking officials, providing sophisticated entertainment. Your melodies are not just sounds, they are emotional landscapes, carefully chosen to evoke a desired mood. This emphasis on live music was central to Ottoman court life, where skilled musicians were highly valued. Or maybe you were a poet or a storyteller. You might be called upon to recite classical Persian ghazals, their lyrical beauty filling the air, or to narrate tales from the 1001 Nights, transporting your audience to far-off lands of adventure and magic. Your voice becomes an instrument, your words woven into tapestries of imagination. The ability to captivate an audience with words was a highly esteemed skill, demonstrating not just memory but also intelligence and sensitivity. Historians still argue whether the divan poetry written by some male concubines was purely for entertainment, or also served as a subtle form of personal expression or even critique. If you are a dancer, your movements must be fluid and graceful, conveying emotion without words. You might perform alone or as part of a small ensemble, your body telling stories of ancient heroes or unrequited love. The dance is not merely physical, it is an art form that requires discipline, precision, and an understanding of its cultural significance. One quirky tidbit: some male dancers in the Ottoman court were known to incorporate elements of Sufi whirling into their performances, blurring the lines between spiritual devotion and entertainment. It was a visual spectacle, sometimes hypnotic, sometimes subtly suggestive. These performances are more than just entertainment. They are a form of soft diplomacy, a display of the Sultan's wealth, sophistication, and good taste. You are a living testament to the richness of the Ottoman Empire's culture. Through your art, you contribute to the prestige of the court, reflecting its grandeur to both internal and external observers. You are, in essence, a cultural ambassador, even if your stage is often a private chamber. However, the life of a performer in the palace is not without its anxieties. You are always under scrutiny, always expected to be at your best. A single wrong note, a forgotten line, or a stumble during a dance could lead to disfavor. You learn to manage your nerves, to channel the pressure into your performance, and to understand that your artistic expression is inextricably linked to your personal security. You spend countless hours refining your craft, often under the tutelage of master artists brought into the palace specifically for this purpose. This commitment to artistic excellence, even for those in your position, underscores the Ottoman court's deep appreciation for the arts. Your talent is your currency, and you strive to make it the most valuable currency in the realm, knowing that every performance is an audition for your continued survival and prosperity. Even with your elevated status and artistic endeavors, you quickly become acutely aware of the constant undercurrent of rivalries and jealousies that permeate the Ottoman harem. This opulent world, for all its beauty, is a hotbed of ambition, where every glance, every whispered word, and every perceived slight carries weight. You are not just competing for the Sultan's attention. You are navigating a complex web of alliances and animosities among concubines, eunuchs, and even various factions within the imperial family. It's like a never-ending season of a reality show, but with much higher stakes than a cash prize. These rivalries aren't always overt. More often, they manifest as subtle sabotage, a rumor planted, a minor disobedience exaggerated, a valuable item misplaced just before a crucial appearance. You learn to read the room, to detect the tension in the air, and to identify those who might secretly wish for your downfall. Trust is a rare commodity, and you dole it out sparingly, if at all. This environment of constant competition was a well-documented feature of many royal courts, driven by limited resources and the desire for proximity to power. The competition is fierce not just among fellow male concubines, but also from other inhabitants of the palace who might view you as an encroachment on their own influence. Female members of the imperial family, like the valid sultan, sultan's mother, or favored concubines, might see your closeness to the sultan as a threat to their own standing or to the future of their sons. While your position differs from that of the female inhabitants, the principle of vying for influence remains the same. Historians still argue whether these rivalries primarily stemmed from personal ambition or were reflections of larger political factions within the empire. You learn to protect yourself, not just through caution, but through building subtle alliances. Perhaps you find common ground with a particular eunuch who appreciates your discretion, or a kitchen staff member who can provide you with useful gossip. These connections, however minor, can offer a degree of protection or provide crucial warnings about impending troubles. One quirky tidbit: some male concubines were known to have secret admirers among the lower-ranking palace staff who would discreetly provide them with information or small favors, often out of genuine affection or admiration. The stakes of these rivalries are immense. Falling out of favor, whether due to a genuine mistake or a well-executed plot by a rival, can mean a swift descent. Your luxurious quarters might be taken away, your access to the sultan curtailed, and your valuable gifts might be repossessed. In severe cases, you could be exiled from the palace entirely, sent to a distant province to live out your days in obscurity, a fate that, to someone accustomed to palace life, could feel worse than death. You always carry the unspoken understanding that your good fortune is fragile, hanging by a thread of imperial whim. You learn the art of flattery, but also the more important art of sincere praise when it is due. You learn to offer small courtesies, to avoid unnecessary conflict, and to maintain an outward demeanor of pleasant neutrality. Even when your stomach churns with anxiety, it's a constant performance, a carefully constructed facade to shield yourself from the sharp edges of ambition that surround you. Every smile is assessed, every word weighed, and every gesture interpreted. This relentless pressure of observation and competition can be profoundly isolating, reinforcing the sense that your true self must always remain hidden, even from those you serve. In a world where your value is tied to your physical well-being and appearance, medical care and health are paramount. The Ottoman court, especially the Sultan's immediate retinue, had access to the most advanced medical knowledge and practices of the time. You might not have understood the intricacies of humoral theory or the properties of every herb, but you certainly benefited from the presence of skilled physicians, often trained in the imperial medical school, who served the palace. It's like living in an ancient version of a VIP hospital, where your health is literally a matter of state importance. Any ailment, no matter how minor, would be attended to promptly. A common cold might warrant a special concoction of herbs and honey, while a more serious fever would bring a physician to your bedside, taking your pulse and examining your tongue with grave seriousness. The aim was always to ensure you were in peak condition, ready to serve, perform, or simply maintain your pleasing appearance. This focus on the health of palace inhabitants reflects a pragmatic understanding of their value as assets to the court. You would experience treatments that seem strange by modern standards, but were cutting edge for the era. Bloodletting, a common practice for rebalancing the body's humors, might be prescribed for a headache. Herbal remedies, often derived from ancient Greek, Persian, or local Anatolian traditions, would be brewed into potent teas or applied as poultices. Imagine the pungent aroma of dried roots and leaves filling your room as a healer attempts to cure your stomachache. One quirky tidbit: palace physicians sometimes used precious stones, ground into powders, as ingredients in their remedies, believing they possessed curative properties. Talk about expensive medicine. Hygiene was also surprisingly advanced for the time, especially within the palace. Regular bathing was encouraged, and elaborate hammams, bathhouses, were a feature of the palace complex, offering cleansing and relaxation. The importance of cleanliness for preventing disease was understood, if not always perfectly. You'd learn to appreciate the steaming warmth of the bath, a rare moment of communal relaxation, even amidst the watchful eyes of the attendants. Despite the best efforts, illness could still strike, and some conditions were beyond the reach of even the most skilled physicians. Outbreaks of plague or smallpox, though less frequent within the insulated walls of the palace, were always a terrifying possibility. The constant threat of infectious disease meant that preventative measures, such as quarantining new arrivals or maintaining strict cleanliness, were taken seriously. Historians still argue about the true efficacy of many traditional Ottoman medical practices compared to modern understanding, but their systematic approach was undeniable. Your health was not just a personal matter. It was a matter of the Sultan's household. A favored concubine falling ill could disrupt routines, cause concern, and potentially affect the Sultan's mood. Therefore, your swift recovery was always a priority. You were cared for, often meticulously, not out of pure humanitarian concern, but because your good health was an integral part of the efficient functioning of the luxurious, yet demanding, imperial court. You were a valuable resource. Unlike any valuable resource, you were carefully maintained. Your life within the harem is a tapestry woven from strict daily routines and rituals. From the moment you wake until you finally find sleep, your hours are structured, disciplined, and largely predictable. This rigid schedule, far from being monotonous, provided a sense of order and security within the often unpredictable world of courtly intrigue. It's like living by a very precise, very ancient clock, where every chime dictates your next move. Your day often begins before dawn, with the first call to prayer, the fauja. Even if not strictly religious, you are expected to rise, perform your ablutions, and participate in or observe the morning prayers. This communal act of devotion underscores the deep religious foundation of the Ottoman Empire and your place within its Islamic framework. After prayers, a light breakfast would be served, typically simple fare like bread, cheese, olives, and perhaps some fruit, providing the energy for the day ahead. Then begins your cycle of duties and lessons. If you are a student, you might attend classes on languages, history, or religious texts. If your talent lies in music or dance, your mornings could be dedicated to practice sessions, refining your craft under the watchful eye of a master. Those with other skills might be assigned to specific tasks, assisting in the Sultan's personal chambers, preparing the day's entertainment, or managing various aspects of the household. Each task, no matter how small, is performed with meticulous attention to detail, as imperfection could lead to disfavor. Midday would bring the dua prayer, followed by the main meal. This was often a more elaborate affair, though still observed within the confines of your status. You eat communally with others of your rank, a small comfort in an otherwise stratified environment. After the meal, there might be a short period for rest or quiet contemplation, perhaps a chance to read or engage in a low-key conversation with a trusted companion. Historians still argue about the extent of genuine personal leisure time afforded to concubines, given the constant demands of palace life. The afternoon typically involves more duties or training, preparing for the evening's events. If the Sultan is hosting guests or desires entertainment, you might spend hours rehearsing your performance. There are also frequent inspections by the eunuchs, ensuring cleanliness, order, and proper decorum are maintained throughout the palace. You learn to anticipate these inspections, ensuring your quarters are immaculate and your appearance is beyond reproach. One quirky tidbit: some palace residents would strategically place sweet-smelling herbs or incense around their living areas just before inspections, hoping to impress the eunuchs with their cleanliness, or simply to mask any less than pleasant odors. It was a subtle form of biohacking in the old world. As evening approaches, the Maghrib and Isha prayers mark the winding down of the day. If you are part of the Sultan's entertainment, your night might just be beginning with performances that could last for hours. Otherwise, your evening might involve quiet study, conversation, or simply preparing for the next day's routine. Sleep, when it finally comes, is a welcome escape from the constant demands and observations. Your routine is your anchor, a predictable rhythm in a world where your standing could change on a whim. Among the many luxuries afforded within the palace, the sheer abundance and variety of food and feasting stand out. Your initial meager diet quickly becomes a distant memory, replaced by an astonishing array of dishes reflecting the vast culinary traditions of the Ottoman Empire. This wasn't just sustenance. It was a daily celebration of wealth, power, and the diverse bounty of a sprawling empire. Imagine a perpetual buffet, but every dish is a masterpiece, and you're always vaguely worried about spilling something on your fancy robes. Meals are a highly ritualized affair, even for those not dining directly with the Sultan. You eat communally, but the quality of the food and the setting vary depending on your rank. As a favored male concubine, your meals would be far superior to those of the common staff, often served from the imperial kitchens which operated on an enormous scale. The daily provisioning of the palace was a logistical marvel, requiring vast quantities of fresh produce, meats, spices, and grains brought in from across the empire. Historians still argue about the precise dietary breakdown of palace inhabitants versus common citizens, but the difference in quality and quantity was undeniable. You'd partake in dishes that blend influences from Central Asia, the Middle East, the Balkans, and Anatolia. Think succulent roasted lamb, fragrant with herbs and spices, alongside platters of rice pilaf, infused with saffron and pistachios. There would be an abundance of fresh fruits, seasonal and exotic, from plump figs and sweet grapes to pomegranates and dates. Vegetables, often prepared in olive oil with garlic and lemon, would accompany every meal. It was a symphony of flavors, a testament to the empire's reach and its sophisticated culinary arts beyond the main courses. There's an endless array of sweets and pastries, syrupy baklava, delicate rosewater puddings, and sticky fruit compotes would be common fare. Imagine biting into a piece of lokum or Turkish delight, its soft, chewy texture and sweet, perfumed flavor a pure indulgence. These confections weren't just desserts. They were often miniature works of art, intricately shaped and garnished. One quirky tidbit: the palace kitchens sometimes experimented with incredibly elaborate and bizarre dishes, like whole roasted ostriches stuffed with various smaller birds, purely for display at grand feasts. It was less about eating and more about showing off. Beverages would include fresh fruit juices, sherbets made from sweetened fruit and rosewater, and of course, coffee. Coffee, which had become increasingly popular in the Ottoman Empire, would be brewed strong and served in small, elegant cups, a ritual in itself. Alcohol, while generally forbidden for devout Muslims, might sometimes be present in certain private, less formal settings, though its consumption was always discreet. Feasts, when they occurred, were spectacles of opulence. While you might not dine at the Sultan's own table, you would be part of the larger procession, witnessing the endless parade of dishes, the elaborate presentation, and the sheer scale of the culinary effort. These were not just meals. They were expressions of imperial power and generosity. The sheer abundance, the constant availability of rich and varied foods, served as a daily reminder of your privileged, if constrained, existence within the very heart of the Ottoman Empire. Every bite was a taste of your current reality. Your transformation within the palace is also vividly apparent in your clothing and adornment. Gone are the rough fabrics and simple designs of your past. Now you are enveloped in the sumptuous textiles of the Ottoman court, a walking testament to the empire's wealth and the Sultan's refined taste. Your attire isn't merely practical, it's a language signaling your status, your proximity to power, and the very identity the palace has bestowed upon you. It's like being dressed by the world's most exclusive and demanding fashion house. Every day, the primary garment you wear is often a kaftan, a long flowing robe made from the finest materials: silk, brocade, velvet, or sometimes even intricate blends woven with gold and silver threads. These aren't just single pieces of fabric. They are often layered, creating a sense of depth and luxury. The colors are rich and vibrant: deep blues, emerald greens, ruby reds, and imperial purples, each dye painstakingly extracted and applied. The quality of the fabric, the intricacy of the embroidery, and the richness of the colors directly reflect your standing. A more favored concubine would wear a kaftan of finer silk and more elaborate embroidery than a newly arrived page. Historians still argue about the symbolic significance of specific colors or patterns on these garments. Though imperial monopolies on certain dyes were well known, beneath the kaftan you'd wear loose-fitting trousers, kalva, and a fine shirt, jimlek. Your head would be covered by a turban or a small cap, the style of which could also indicate your position. Your feet would be shod in soft leather slippers or boots, often adorned with embroidery. Every piece of your ensemble is carefully chosen and maintained, reflecting the meticulous standards of the palace. You are a living display, always ready to be presented. Adornment extends beyond just clothing. Depending on your level of favor, you might wear simple, elegant jewelry, a silver ring, a subtle bracelet, or even a jeweled brooch. These pieces are not ostentatious, but serve as understated markers of your privilege. You are also expected to maintain impeccable personal grooming. Your hair would be clean and well kept, perhaps scented with rosewater. A freshly shaven face was common, though some might have carefully trimmed beards if they reached a certain age or position. The importance of cleanliness and a pleasant scent was not just for aesthetics, but also considered vital for health and religious purity. One quirky tidbit: some male concubines were known to use powdered gold dust on their skin or hair for special occasions, believing it enhanced their radiance. Talk about a globe. The ceremonial nature of certain occasions would call for even more elaborate attire. For grand receptions or imperial feasts, you might don a specially prepared kaftan, perhaps one gifted directly by the Sultan, shimmering with precious metals and adorned with pearls. These were garments of spectacle, designed to impress visitors and reinforce the overwhelming power and majesty of the Ottoman court. Your clothing serves as a constant reminder of your changed status. It distinguishes you from the world outside and identifies you as an integral, if particular, part of the Sultan's household. Every stitch, every fold, every rich color tells a story of your absorption into the empire's most exclusive circle. It's a heavy mantle to wear, not just because of the fabric, but because of the expectations and the watchful eyes that come with it. You are literally dressed for success, and every thread whispers of the constant scrutiny you face. In the vibrant, cosmopolitan melting pot of the Ottoman Empire, the ability to communicate across diverse cultures was highly valued, and thus learning languages becomes a crucial aspect of your development. The palace isn't just a Turkish-speaking bubble, it's a crossroads of nations, and fluency in multiple tongues is a significant asset that can set you apart and increase your utility to the Sultan. It's like being dropped into an ancient, very opulent United Nations meeting, and you're expected to be the universal translator. Naturally, Ottoman Turkish is your primary language. You master its nuances, its elegant script, and the polite forms of address required within the court. This is the lingua franca of the empire, the language of administration, daily life, and most internal communication. If you arrive speaking another tongue, your initial lessons would have been intense, focused entirely on achieving fluency in Turkish. This linguistic assimilation was a key element in integrating diverse populations into the imperial system. Beyond Turkish, Arabic is often a fundamental part of your linguistic education. As the language of the Quran and Islamic scholarship, it's essential for religious understanding and for engaging with learned individuals from across the Muslim world. You'd spend hours memorizing verses, understanding theological concepts, and perhaps even engaging in debates about religious texts with your tutors. This wasn't just about faith. It was about cultural literacy within the broader Islamic world. Historians still argue whether the depth of Arabic instruction varied significantly based on a concubine's intended role, with some suggesting greater emphasis for those destined for more scholarly positions. Persian is another vital language, particularly if you are inclined towards the arts, poetry, or diplomacy. Persian was the language of high culture, literature, and imperial courtly traditions, especially influential in the eastern provinces of the empire. Many of the most celebrated poets and literary figures wrote in Persian, and an understanding of the language would open up a vast world of classical poetry and prose. Imagine reading the epic Shahnameh in its original form, or engaging in witty banter using Persian proverbs. One quirky tidbit: some male concubines were known to compose verses in multiple languages, seamlessly switching between Turkish, Arabic, and Persian within a single poem, a true display of their linguistic prowess. It was a kind of ancient linguistic acrobatics. Depending on your origin or specific duties, you might also be exposed to other languages. If you came from a Balkan region, you might already know a Slavic language or Greek. If you were destined for roles involving diplomatic contact or managing certain administrative affairs, you might even learn smatterings of European languages like Italian or French, though this was less common for concubines in your immediate position. The sheer linguistic diversity of the Ottoman Empire meant that polyglots were highly valued for bridging cultural divides. Your ability to speak multiple languages not only makes you more valuable, but also provides a degree of intellectual stimulation in a life that can otherwise feel confined. It allows you to access different forms of knowledge, to engage with a wider range of people, and to potentially serve the Sultan in more nuanced ways, perhaps even interpreting for him during private audiences with foreign dignitaries. The more languages you master, the more doors open, metaphorically speaking, even within the strict confines of the palace walls. Beyond the practical demands of service and entertainment, some male concubines found solace and fulfillment in intellectual pursuits. The Ottoman court, for all its opulence and political intrigue, was also a significant center of learning and culture, particularly during certain periods. If you showed an aptitude for scholarship or a deep curiosity, you might be granted access to the Sultan's vast libraries and the tutelage of learned scholars and scribes, turning your gilded cage into a somewhat luxurious university. It's like having access to the world's most exclusive academic club, but your membership depends entirely on the whims of a very powerful patron. Your interests might lead you to history. Imagine poring over ancient chronicles, meticulously handwritten, manuscripts detailing the rise and fall of empires, the lives of sultans, and the great battles of the past. Understanding history wasn't just about curiosity. It provided context for the present, and might even offer insights into the political machinations around you. You'd learn about the complex lineage of the Ottoman dynasty, the stories of their conquests, and the philosophical underpinnings of their rule. Historians still argue about the extent to which these historical studies were encouraged for genuine intellectual growth versus serving as a tool for political indoctrination. Perhaps your passion is poetry. You might spend hours not just reciting the works of masters like Rumi, Hafez, or Fazuli, but also attempting to compose your own verses. The intricate rules of classical, Ottoman, and Persian poetry, with their complex meters and rhyme schemes, would challenge your mind. You might engage in ghazal writing, expressing themes of love, longing, and the transient nature of beauty, often with layers of mystical or spiritual meaning. The ability to craft elegant verse was highly admired and could further endear you to the Sultan, who was often himself a patron of the art and sometimes a poet. One quirky tidbit: some male concubines are rumored to have engaged in poetry duels, impromptu contests of wit and verse, playfully challenging each other in the presence of their patrons. It was a kind of ancient rap battle, but with much more decorum and fewer microphones. You might also delve into philosophy or theology. Debates on logic, metaphysics, and the interpretations of Islamic law were common among the learned elite. You could engage with scholarly texts, exploring the works of Ibn Sina, Avicenna, or Ibn Rushd, Averroes, grappling with complex ideas about existence, knowledge, and the divine. This intellectual engagement provided a mental escape, a realm where your mind could roam freely, even if your body remained confined. The palace libraries were treasure troves of knowledge, containing texts on astronomy, mathematics, medicine, geography, and various sciences collected from across the Islamic world and beyond. Access to these resources was an immense privilege, one that very few outside the palace walls could ever dream of. Your engagement with these subjects not only sharpened your mind, but also made you a more stimulating companion for the Sultan, capable of engaging in conversations beyond mere pleasantries. Ultimately, these intellectual pursuits offered a sanctuary. In a life defined by external forces and constant surveillance, the world of ideas provided an internal space of freedom. It allowed you to cultivate your mind, to explore, and to find a sense of purpose beyond your immediate duties, making your gilded cage feel just a little less confining. In a world as confined and rigidly controlled as the Ottoman harem, the concept of forbidden love and risks looms large, a dangerous whisper in the opulent corridors. While your life might offer luxuries, true emotional freedom, particularly in matters of the heart, is a luxury utterly denied to you. Any deep romantic attachment, whether with another concubine, a servant, or someone from the outside world, is not merely frowned upon. It is a profound transgression, carrying severe and often brutal consequences. It's like being given a magnificent feast, but every dish is poisoned if you dare to taste it with genuine affection. The reasons for this strict control are multifaceted. Primarily, your existence within the harem is predicated on your utility and loyalty to the Sultan or your immediate patron. Emotional attachments to others could compromise that loyalty, create divided interests, and introduce unpredictable elements into the tightly controlled environment. The purity of the line of succession was paramount for the Sultan, and any perceived deviation in the behavior of those around him, especially male concubines, could be seen as a threat to the established order. This absolute control over personal relationships was a common feature in many imperial courts, designed to prevent rivalries and ensure political stability. Surveillance within the harem is pervasive, conducted by the ever-watchful eunuchs and a network of informants who report every deviation. A lingering glance, a shared secret, a discreet gift-any sign of an illicit connection could be noticed and reported. The palace walls, for all their grandeur, are also a labyrinth of eyes and ears, making privacy almost impossible. Imagine trying to keep a secret when everyone around you is trained to spot the slightest deviation from the norm. It's an exhausting and terrifying game. The risks associated with forbidden love are not merely social ostracization. Punishments could range from demotion and isolation to severe physical penalties, including imprisonment, banishment to a remote province, or even death. The exact nature of the punishment would depend on the perceived severity of the transgression and the whims of the Sultan or the chief eunuch. The consequences were designed to be a stark deterrent, a warning to anyone who dared to put personal desire above imperial duty. Historians still argue about the frequency of such transgressions and the true extent of the punishments meted out. Given the scarcity of direct accounts, even the slightest suspicion could ruin your life. A misinterpreted gesture, a false accusation by a jealous rival, or a momentary lapse in judgment could lead to your downfall. This constant threat fosters an environment of intense caution and emotional suppression. You learn to guard your feelings, to maintain an outward demeanor of polite indifference, and to avoid any action that could be misconstrued. One quirky tidbit: some male concubines developed incredibly elaborate and subtle systems of communication, using coded messages within poetry or music, or even leaving specific flowers as symbolic signals, trying to express affection without uttering a single dangerous word. It was a romantic yet utterly perilous, dance. Thus, while luxury surrounds you, the deepest human desires for love, for genuine connection are precisely what are most forbidden and most dangerous. You exist in a state of enforced emotional celibacy, where the cost of a true emotional bond is simply too high to bear. The risk is not just to your position or your comfort, but to your very life. In a world brimming with rivalries and dangers, cultivating friendships and alliances becomes a vital survival strategy. While genuine emotional bonds might be forbidden, strategic connections are absolutely essential. You quickly learn that navigating the treacherous currents of the Ottoman court requires more than just individual talent. It demands a network, however small or informal, of people you can rely on, even if only for mutual benefit. It's like being on a deserted island, and everyone else is both a potential rescuer and a potential cannibal. Need to pick your team wisely. These alliances can take many forms. You might forge a bond with a fellow male concubine who shares your interests or who has a similar background. This companionship offers a rare comfort in an isolating environment. You can share whispers of palace gossip, offer each other moral support, and perhaps even collaborate on tasks or performances. These are the people who understand the unique pressures of your existence and with whom you can occasionally drop your carefully constructed facade, even if just for a moment. Historians still argue whether these friendships were primarily based on shared experience or pragmatic political considerations. Beyond your immediate peers, alliances extend to other parts of the palace hierarchy. You might cultivate a relationship with a particular eunuch, perhaps one who is less severe or who appreciates your diligence. Offering small courtesies, anticipating their needs, or simply demonstrating consistent respect can earn you a measure of their favor, which can translate into protection or preferential treatment. Having a powerful eunuch in your corner is like having a very large, very well-connected bodyguard. Similarly, you might form cautious ties with certain members of the female staff, perhaps a senior calfa, female supervisor, or a maid who has access to valuable information. These individuals, moving in different circles, can provide insights into the shifting moods of the Sultan's female family members, or warn you of potential intrigues brewing in their quarters. Information, you quickly learn, is currency, and these alliances are your banks. One quirky tidbit: some male concubines were known to exchange small, personalized gifts with certain trusted palace servants, not for romantic reasons, but as discreet tokens of appreciation and to solidify their informal alliances. It was a subtle form of influence peddling, sweetened with a hint of charm. These alliances are rarely explicit pacts. They are often unspoken understandings, built on mutual trust and shared vulnerabilities. You learn to read subtle signals, to discern who is truly reliable and who might betray you at the first sign of trouble. Betrayal is a constant threat, and a misplaced trust can lead to devastating consequences. You must constantly weigh the benefits of an alliance against the risks of exposure. The true value of these connections often emerges in moments of crisis. A sympathetic eunuch might subtly deflect a false accusation, or a friendly page might pass on a warning about an impending investigation. These small acts of solidarity can mean the difference between maintaining your position and facing severe punishment. Ultimately, while you are a solitary figure in many ways, navigating the Sultan's court alone is an impossibility. Your friendships and alliances, however tenuous or unspoken, form an invisible safety net, allowing you to survive and perhaps even thrive in a world designed to test your every limit. They are a testament to the human need for connection even when constrained by the strictest of rules. In a world defined by absolute power, the constant spectre of punishment and disfavor hangs over your head. No matter how favored you are, how talented, or how discreet, a single misstep, a perceived insult, or even a baseless accusation can plunge you from the heights of luxury to the depths of despair. The sultan's whim, the eunuch's stern judgment, or the cunning of a rival can instantly shatter your privileged existence. It's like playing a high-stakes game of musical chairs, where the music can stop at any second and the chair might vanish. This can begin subtly. Perhaps the sultan's gaze lingers less often on you, or your invitations to private functions become less frequent. Your gifts might cease, or the quality of your meals could subtly diminish. These are the early warning signs, the quiet withdrawal of favor that chills you to the bone. You become acutely sensitive to these shifts, constantly analyzing every interaction, every nonverbal cue, searching for answers. Historians still argue whether the withdrawal of favor was often a deliberate, slow punishment or simply a natural outcome of the sultan's attention shifting to new individuals. If the disfavor deepens, more overt punishments follow. You might be removed from your preferred duties, assigned to more menial tasks in less desirable parts of the palace, perhaps even relegated to the outer courtyards. Your luxurious private quarters could be taken away, and you might find yourself back in a shared dormitory, stripped of your comforts. This loss of status, of dignity, can be more painful than physical discomfort, a constant reminder of your fall from grace. More severe transgressions, real or imagined, invite harsher penalties, imprisonment within the palace's own dungeons, or a remote fortress is a terrifying possibility. The conditions would be harsh, a stark contrast to the life you've known, with meager food, damp cells, and the gnawing fear of an uncertain future. Or you could face banishment from the palace entirely, sent to a distant provincial town or estate, often with no further support or means. For someone who has known nothing but the structured, opulent life of the court, this can be a terrifying prospect, akin to being cast adrift without a compass. You'd effectively lose your entire identity and support system. Physical punishment, while less common for favored concubines than for common criminals, was not unheard of, especially for serious offenses like theft, insubordination, or attempts at illicit romantic relationships. However, the true terror often lay in the uncertainty and the psychological pressure. The constant threat of these consequences enforces absolute obedience and unwavering loyalty. One quirky tidbit: sometimes a disgraced concubine might be gifted to a higher-ranking official far from the capital, a way to remove them from the sultan's sight without resorting to public execution. It was a kind of high-level witness protection program, but with less protection and more public shaming. The ultimate punishment, of course, is death. While rare for male concubines, unless they were involved in serious political conspiracies or egregious betrayals, it was always a possibility. The silence with which individuals could simply disappear from the palace was a chilling reminder of the sultan's absolute power over life and death. You learn to live with this ever-present threat, to navigate the complex social landscape with extreme caution. Every decision, every word, every movement is weighed against the potential for disfavor. The fear of falling, of losing everything, is a powerful motivator, ensuring that you remain compliant, discreet, and forever at the mercy of the imperial will. Beyond the luxurious facade and political intrigue, the harem also functions as a complex, self-sufficient economy. It's not just a residence for the Sultan's household. It's a bustling marketplace, a production center, and a significant financial entity in its own right. Understanding its internal commerce and financial flows is key to appreciating its intricate operations. Imagine a small, incredibly wealthy city with its own internal currency and very exclusive shops. At its core, the harem's economy is fueled by the vast resources of the Ottoman Empire, channeled through the Sultan's treasury. A substantial portion of the imperial budget is allocated to maintaining the harem, covering everything from the daily provisions of food, water, and fuel to the procurement of luxurious silks, jewels, and exotic goods. This massive intake of goods creates a constant need for management, accounting, and distribution. Historians still argue about the precise percentage of the imperial budget dedicated to the harem, but estimates suggest it was significant, underscoring its importance to the Sultan's prestige. Within the harem, there's a constant movement of goods and services. Skilled artisans, often female slaves or trained palace staff, produce a wide array of items: exquisite embroidery for robes, delicate pastries for feasts, intricate jewelry, and perfumed oils. These products are either for internal consumption, for gifts from the Sultan to his favored subjects, or sometimes even for discreet sale outside the palace to generate income for the harem's coffers. One quirky tidbit: some senior eunuchs were known to have their own private workshops within the palace, producing specific luxury items that they would then sell through intermediaries in the Istanbul markets, essentially running a very exclusive, high-end underground economy. Money, in the form of gold and silver coins, circulates within the harem among the various ranks. The Sultan would bestow monetary gifts upon his favored concubines, eunuchs, and high-ranking female members of his family. These individuals, in turn, would use their allowances to purchase goods or services from the internal palace vendors, or to tip the lower-ranking servants who provided them with daily comforts. It creates a microeconomy with its own ebb and flow, where a eunuch might earn a small fortune and a kitchen servant might live month to month. Your own role within this economy, as a male concubine, primarily involves being a recipient of its benefits. You consume the finest foods, wear the most luxurious clothes, and live in comfortable surroundings, all provided by the palace's economic engine. While you might not be directly involved in the large-scale financial management, you are a living testament to the harem's ability to sustain such opulence. If you receive monetary gifts, you might engage in small, personal transactions, perhaps buying a unique piece of calligraphy or a rare scent from a palace vendor. The chief, black eunuch, as the administrator of the harem, played a crucial role in managing its finances, overseeing its daily expenses, and ensuring that all accounts were meticulously kept. His power stemmed not just from his proximity to the Sultan, but also from his control over this immense budget and the hundreds, if not thousands, of people who depended on it. His signature was often required for large expenditures, making him a central figure in the harem's economic life. The intricate system ensured that while wealth flowed in, it was meticulously managed, down to the last spice jar. For all the luxury and confinement, there are moments when you catch tantalizing glimpses of the outside world. These aren't intentional outings, of course, but fleeting sensations that remind you of the vibrant, bustling city that thrives just beyond the palace walls. These glimpses are both a blessing and a curse, a reminder of what you've lost, but also a tantalizing suggestion of a life you might, one day, regain. It's like looking through a very ornate keyhole at a carnival happening just outside. From certain high windows or battlements, you might catch a panoramic view of Istanbul. Imagine seeing the shimmering waters of the Bosphorus, dotted with the sails of Ottoman galleys and merchant ships, their cargoes bringing exotic goods from across the globe. You might spot the minarets of the Hagia Sophia and the blue mosque piercing the sky, their calls to prayer echoing across the city 5 times a day, a constant reminder of the empire's religious heart. The sheer scale of the city, its sprawling markets, crowded neighborhoods, and endless activity contrasts sharply with the quiet, measured pace of palace life. Historians still argue about how much knowledge and understanding palace inhabitants truly had of the common life outside their walls. Given their insulated existence, you might hear the distant sounds of the city drifting in on the wind, the shouts of street vendors hawking their wares in the grand bazaar, the rhythmic clang of blacksmiths at work, the muffled chatter of crowds, or the distant, joyous sound of a festival. These are the sounds of freedom, of ordinary lives being lived, of people going about their business without the constant scrutiny that defines your own existence. One quirky tidbit: some male concubines would secretly bribe lower-ranking palace guards to tell them stories of life outside the walls, trading small trinkets or leftover sweets for vivid descriptions of the markets, the taverns, and the daily lives of ordinary folk. It was their equivalent of watching a favorite TV show, but with much more risk. Occasionally, you might see a glimpse of dignitaries arriving or departing, their retinues colorful and bustling, briefly disturbing the serene order of the palace courtyards. These are foreign ambassadors, powerful pashas, or victorious generals, their presence a fleeting connection to the broader world of politics and power beyond the harem. You see their grand robes, their proud bearing, and imagine their conversations, wondering what news they bring from distant lands. Even the food you eat, the silks you wear, and the spices that perfume the air serve as subtle reminders of the outside world. They are sourced from far-flung corners of the empire and beyond, brought in by merchants, traders, and tribute missions. Each item has a story, a journey from a remote village or a distant port, a journey you can only imagine. These sensory glimpses of the outside world fuel your imagination, painting pictures of a life unknown. They can be a source of longing, a reminder of the liberty you've sacrificed. Yet, they also serve as a validation of the empire's vastness and power, a power that you, in your own small way, are privileged to be a part of. The world is out there, always, just beyond reach, a constant, tantalizing whisper. Within the Ottoman palace, religious practices are not merely a personal choice, but an integral, pervasive aspect of daily life, shaping the very rhythm of your existence. As a part of the Sultan's household, you are expected to adhere to the tenets of Islam, and its rituals permeate every hour, every space. It's like living in a grand monastery, but instead of focusing solely on spiritual devotion, you're also navigating political machinations and performance demands. The 5 daily prayers, the Salat, mark the progression of your day. From the first call to prayer at dawn Fajr, echoing through the palace, to the final prayer of the night, Isha, you are reminded of your spiritual duties. While individual piety varies, participation in communal prayers, especially for those in public-facing roles or with an eye towards advancement, is often expected. You'd learn the precise movements, the verses to recite, and the solemnity required. This consistent adherence to Islamic ritual served as a unifying force across the diverse empire. Beyond daily prayers, the palace observes the major Islamic holidays and festivals with appropriate reverence and celebration. The fasting month of Ramadan would bring a shift in daily routines, with meals served only after sunset, iftar, and before dawn, sahar. The atmosphere would transform, becoming more introspective and spiritual, culminating in the joyous celebrations of Eid al-Fitr. Similarly, Eid al-Adha, the festival of sacrifice, would involve communal prayers and charitable acts. These celebrations, while deeply religious, also serve as opportunities for public displays of piety and generosity by the Sultan and his court. Historians still argue whether the outward display of religious adherence by concubines was a genuine reflection of their faith or primarily a performative act for social acceptance. Religious scholars and imams are often present within the palace, providing instruction and guidance. You might attend lessons on the Quran, Hadith sayings and actions of the Prophet Muhammad, or Islamic law, Sharia. This religious education isn't just about faith. It also provides a moral and ethical framework that underpins Ottoman society and governance. You learn about the importance of charity, zakot, humility, and justice, even if the realities of palace life sometimes seem to contradict these ideals. The physical spaces within the palace also reflect its religious devotion. There are dedicated prayer rooms, often beautifully decorated with calligraphy and intricate tile work, where individuals can perform their daily devotions. Cleanliness, especially ritual purity, is paramount, and ample washing facilities are always available before prayer. One quirky tidbit: some devout eunuchs or palace officials would carry small personal prayer rugs adorned with unique patterns, ensuring they could perform their salat anywhere, even in a secluded corner of a busy courtyard, maintaining their devotion amidst the hubbub. For you, these religious practices are not just obligations. They can also offer a sense of calm and spiritual grounding in a life of uncertainty. They provide a predictable structure, a connection to something larger than yourself, and a quiet space for introspection, even if brief. In a world where your agency is limited, faith can be a powerful inner sanctuary, a source of resilience against the external pressures of the court. The air within the palace is always charged with unspoken tensions, particularly concerning succession and power plays. Your life, and indeed the stability of the entire empire, is inextricably linked to the Sultan and, more specifically, to the question of who will succeed him. This is not just a theoretical concern. It's a constant, palpable reality that shapes every alliance, every rivalry, and every calculated move within the court. It's like living inside a very slow, very intricate chess game where the king is always in play, and everyone else is a pawn hoping to become a queen. The Ottoman system of succession was notoriously brutal and often unclear. Unlike some European monarchies with clear primogeniture where the eldest son inherits, the Ottoman tradition initially followed a policy known as Fatih Yusulu, or the law of the conqueror, which essentially meant that any son could ascend to the throne. This often led to fratricide, where the new sultan would eliminate his brothers to prevent future challenges to his rule. A practice designed to prevent devastating civil wars, but leading to immense tragedy within the royal family. Imagine the fear among the sultan's sons, each a potential ruler, each a potential victim. Historians still argue about the moral justifications for such a brutal system, weighing stability against human cost, while you, as a male concubine, are not a direct claimant to the throne. Your life is deeply affected by these power struggles. You are an observer and potentially a minor pawn in the grander game. You might serve a prince, a potential heir, and your fortunes would rise or fall with his. You would witness the subtle machinations of the sultan's mother, the valid sultan, who often wielded immense political power as she sought to secure her son's ascension. You'd see the eunuchs, often aligned with different factions, maneuvering for influence. You become adept at recognizing the signs of shifting allegiances. A particular eunuch suddenly gaining more access to a certain prince, a favored female consort being seen more often in the sultan's chambers, or a new tutor appointed to one of the younger princes. These are all subtle indicators of the ongoing power struggle. You learn to keep your opinions to yourself, to never openly support one faction over another, and to always maintain a facade of neutrality. Open partisanship is a direct path to ruin if your chosen side loses. One quirky tidbit: some astute male concubines would keep detailed, discreet journals of court events and personalities, hoping that if their chosen patron ascended, this secret intelligence would be valuable. Of course, getting caught with such a journal was incredibly dangerous. The periods of a sultan's ill health or old age are particularly fraught with tension. The air thickens with anticipation, whispered rumors, and increased surveillance. Everyone is positioning themselves, trying to predict the outcome and ensure their own survival in the transition. The death of a sultan is often followed by a period of intense uncertainty, rapid changes in personnel, and swift, often brutal, purges of those aligned with the previous regime or the losing side. Your proximity to this constant drama means you live with a quiet anxiety, always aware that the very foundation of your existence could shift overnight. You are part of a system where power is absolute, and its transfer is a matter of life and death, not just for the royal family, but for everyone within the palace walls. The echo of every cough from the sultan's chamber, every hushed conversation behind closed doors, serves as a grim reminder of the high stakes involved in the grand game of Ottoman succession. While the palace offers unimaginable luxury, the ultimate dream for many is the tantalizing, elusive possibility of a life after the harem. For some, freedom might eventually come, but for most, it's a future riddled with challenges, a stark contrast to the pampered, albeit constrained, existence they've known. Imagine being released from a gilded cage, only to find the outside world a bewildering, dangerous jungle. The paths to liberation were few and narrow. One common route was manumission, or emancipation, granted by the Sultan himself, often as a reward for long and loyal service, or upon the Sultan's death if he wished to free certain individuals in his will. A beloved concubine might be freed and given a pension, or even a small estate, to live out their days in quiet retirement. This act of freeing slaves was considered a pious deed in Islam, and sultans sometimes engaged in it, particularly in their later years. Historians still argue about the true motivations behind such acts: piety, political strategy, or genuine affection. Another possibility was to be married off to a higher-ranking official outside the palace. While this might seem like a form of freedom, it was still largely an arranged union, designed to cement political alliances or reward loyal servants, rather than a choice for love. For a male concubine, this would be less common than for a female. One, but not entirely unheard of, especially if they had proven to be particularly discreet and well-connected. Such a marriage would likely mean a life of continued service, albeit in a different setting. However, for the vast majority, leaving the harem meant facing a deeply uncertain future. You would be entering a world you barely remember, one that has likely changed significantly since you were a child. Your skills, honed for palace life poetry, music, courtly etiquette, might not translate easily into practical means of earning a living outside. It's like being an astronaut who's only ever known space, suddenly having to navigate rush hour traffic and pay taxes. You would lack the practical experience of everyday life, managing money, haggling in markets, understanding property rights, or navigating the complex social strata of common society. The strict discipline and constant supervision of the harem would have left you ill-prepared for the freedoms and responsibilities of independent living. One quirky tidbit: some male concubines, upon gaining their freedom, found themselves so disoriented by the outside world that they desperately tried to find ways back into the familiar routines of palace life, even at a lower status. The golden cage, for all its restrictions, offered a peculiar form of security. Furthermore, you would often lack familial connections. Your original family might be long gone, or you might have been taken from them too young to remember them or their location. Building a new social network from scratch, without the established hierarchies and protections of the palace, would be incredibly challenging. The psychological adjustment would also be immense. Life in the harem trained you to be constantly on guard, to suppress your true emotions, and to always seek favor. Relearning how to trust, how to form genuine relationships, and how to make independent decisions would be a monumental task. The luxuries you once enjoyed would be gone, replaced by the harsh realities of earning your own bread. The transition from a life of gilded confinement to one of open, yet challenging, liberty was rarely simple or easy. Even if you managed to secure your freedom and step beyond the towering walls of the palace, the social stigma endures. Your past as a male concubine, no matter how privileged, would cling to you like a shadow, shaping perceptions and limiting opportunities in the outside world. This isn't a badge of honor. It's a mark of difference, often associated with perceived moral ambiguity and a lack of proper societal integration. It's like graduating from an exclusive, secret academy, and no one knows what you actually learned. But they assume the worst in Ottoman society. Traditional family structures and conventional gender roles were deeply ingrained. Marriage and the establishment of a respectable household was central to social standing. As a former concubine, your background would immediately place you outside these norms. You would not have the lineage, the family connections, or the traditional masculine experiences expected of a man seeking to establish himself in society. This made integration into mainstream social life incredibly difficult, sometimes even impossible. Historians still argue whether this stigma was primarily rooted in religious objections to concubinage, or simply a reflection of broader societal prejudices against those outside conventional family structures. You would face scrutiny and whispers. Prospective employers might be wary, fearing your past associations or questioning your moral character. Potential spouses, if you even considered marriage, would likely view you with suspicion, concerned about your ability to provide for a family or your suitability as a husband. The concept of honor was paramount in Ottoman society, and a past like yours could easily be seen as tainting that honor, not just for you, but for anyone associated with you. One quirky tidbit: some freed male concubines attempted to reinvent themselves by moving to distant towns where their past was unknown. essentially starting a new life under a new identity. But this was a risky gamble. Your knowledge and skills, so valuable within the palace, might be utterly irrelevant or even detrimental outside. Your refined courtly manners might seem overly effeminate or artificial in the rough-and-tumble world of commerce or manual labor. Your artistic talents, unless exceptional enough to secure a patronage outside the court, would likely not provide a stable income. The very things that made you desirable in the harem could make you an outcast in regular society. Furthermore, you would lack the informal social networks that underpin most communities. You wouldn't have childhood friends, extended family, or established professional connections to rely on. You would be an outsider, constantly having to prove yourself, battling against preconceived notions and unspoken judgments. The enduring stigma means that even your freedom comes with its own invisible chains. You are free to move, to speak, to choose, but society's perception of your past life acts as a constant barrier, subtly yet powerfully, limiting your choices and your ability to build a new, conventional life. Your former luxuries are replaced by a new kind of struggle, the fight for acceptance and respect in a world that doesn't quite know what to do with you. Beyond the social stigma, one of the most pressing challenges you'd face upon leaving the Ottoman harem is the immense economic challenges post-harem. Having lived a life where every need was met, every meal provided, and every garment supplied, you would be utterly unprepared for the harsh realities of earning a living in the competitive, often brutal, outside world. It's like being a pampered house cat suddenly dropped into the wild and expected to hunt for its own dinner. Your entire existence within the palace was one of total economic dependence. You received allowances, gifts, and luxurious provisions, but you never had to manage finances, negotiate prices, or understand the intricacies of trade or labor. The concept of a regular wage, or the effort required to earn it, would be entirely alien to you. This sudden lack of institutional support would be a profound shock, stripping away the safety net you never even realized you relied upon. Historians still argue whether the Ottoman state provided any systematic support for freed concubines, beyond initial gifts, suggesting that most were left to fend for themselves. The skills you developed, while highly valued inside the palace, often had little direct market value outside. Your mastery of the oud might earn you a meager living as a street musician, a far cry from entertaining the Sultan. Your elegant calligraphy might find occasional work, but it wouldn't sustain you. Your knowledge of court etiquette, so crucial for navigating the harem, would be useless, perhaps even perceived as overly refined or effeminate in the rough-and-tumble world of common labor. One quirky tidbit: some freed concubines who had learned exceptional culinary skills within the palace kitchens sometimes found success opening small, discreet eateries, serving exotic dishes to a curious public, though this was rare and required significant entrepreneurial spirit. You would lack capital, unless you had managed to discreetly save some of the gold coins gifted to you, or were fortunate enough to receive a generous pension upon your release. You would have no resources to start a business, buy land, or even rent a decent place to live. You would likely be starting from absolute zero, without the familial or social networks that most people relied upon for support. Finding employment would be difficult. Without a trade, a craft, or connections, your options would be limited to unskilled labor, which was physically demanding and paid very little. You might find yourself doing menial tasks, far below your former station, constantly struggling to make ends meet. The psychological impact of this dramatic drop in status combined with the physical exertion you were unaccustomed to, would be immense. Furthermore, the social stigma associated with your past would likely deter many potential employers or business partners. Trust was often built on shared community and family ties, which you would lack. You would be seen as an outsider, someone whose past was mysterious and potentially morally questionable. Ultimately, your freedom came at a significant economic cost. The transition from a life of total dependency within an incredibly wealthy institution to one of rugged, unsupported independence in a complex society would be perhaps the greatest challenge of all. A daily struggle for survival that stood in stark contrast to your former life of effortless luxury. As a former male concubine, the prospects for a conventional marriage abroad or even within Ottoman society would be exceptionally slim. This isn't merely about personal preference. It's a deeply rooted societal issue where your past fundamentally clashes with established norms of family, lineage, and social respectability. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a very traditional, very round hole in Ottoman society. Marriage was primarily a social and economic arrangement focused on establishing a household, ensuring its stability, and producing legitimate heirs. For men, this often involved proving one's ability to provide for a family, possessing a reputable background, and having the social standing to enter into alliances with other families. Your background as a male concubine would undermine all these conventional expectations. While ancient Egyptian weddings were more social than religious, focusing on household stability, Ottoman society, deeply influenced by Islamic traditions, placed significant emphasis on lineage and public reputation, making a past like yours a considerable impediment. First, there's the question of legitimacy and lineage. You would likely have no known family name, no established lineage to present to a prospective bride's family. In a society where family reputation was paramount, this alone would be a massive barrier. You were essentially an individual cut off from the traditional social fabric. Historians still argue about the extent to which a lack of established lineage truly prevented social integration for former palace servants versus other factors like wealth or connections. Then there's the social stigma. As we discussed, your past life would carry an undeniable stigma, implying a deviation from conventional gender roles and expectations. This could make you an undesirable match for families seeking to uphold their honor and respectability. Few families of good standing would willingly marry their daughters to someone with such a background, fearing the social repercussions and the taint it might bring upon their own name. One quirky tidbit: some desperate former concubines are rumored to have paid substantial sums to obscure families in remote villages to arrange marriages, effectively buying a facade of respectability, though these unions were often fragile and unhappy. Furthermore, your personal experiences would be vastly different from what a conventional spouse might expect. You've lived a life of luxury and leisure, albeit confined, possibly without developing the practical skills considered essential for managing a household or earning a living in the competitive outside world. You might also have been conditioned to a certain lifestyle and emotional reserve that would make a conventional partnership challenging, even if a marriage were arranged, perhaps with a woman of lower social standing, or one who was also an outcast in some way. The union would likely be fraught with difficulties. The expectations would be different, and the weight of your past would always be present, an unspoken barrier to genuine intimacy and acceptance. The option of marriage abroad might seem appealing, offering a chance to escape the societal judgment of the Ottoman lands. However, without resources, connections, or language skills beyond those useful in the palace, such a journey would be incredibly difficult and dangerous. And even in a new land, the fundamental challenges of establishing a new life, overcoming prejudice, and finding a suitable partner would remain. For male concubines in ancient Greece, for instance, social stigma and limited legal rights also severely impacted their marriage prospects. Ultimately, while the desire for companionship and family is universal, the path to a conventional marriage for a former male concubine was incredibly steep, often leading to a life of solitude or relationships formed outside the traditional societal norms. Your freedom, paradoxically, could also mean a life lived largely outside the accepted structures of society. Even if you managed to carve out a precarious existence outside the palace, your personal story, your experiences as a male concubine, would largely vanish into the vast silence of history. Your individual legacy and memory would be fleeting, often unrecorded and quickly forgotten within the grand narrative of the Ottoman Empire. This isn't a life destined for history books or heroic ballads. It's a footnote, if that, often subsumed by the larger, more powerful figures you served. It's like living a fascinating, unique life, but leaving no trace of your footsteps in the sand. For the most part, the palace records focused on the Sultan, his immediate family, and the high-ranking officials. The lives of servants, pages, and concubines, while essential to the functioning of the court, were rarely deemed significant enough for detailed biographical accounts. Their personal joys, sorrows, ambitions, and struggles remained largely unwritten, confined to the whispers of the harem and fading memories. This lack of personal documentation is a common challenge for historians studying the lives of marginalized groups in pre-modern societies. Your memory might persist for a brief time among those who knew you directly, the eunuchs who supervised you, the fellow concubines you befriended, or perhaps a sympathetic servant. They might recall your talent for music, your sharp wit, or your quiet demeanor. But as they too aged and passed on, those personal recollections would dissipate, leaving no lasting imprint. It's a reminder of how ephemeral individual lives can be when not connected to power or significant social standing. Even if you achieved some measure of fame through your artistic performances within the palace, that fame rarely extended beyond its walls, and even less so beyond your lifetime. The audience was limited, and the concept of a celebrity in the modern sense didn't exist for those in your position. Your art was for the court, not for public acclaim that would ensure your lasting legacy. Historians still argue whether the anonymity of many concubines was a deliberate strategy of the imperial system, or simply a consequence of the historical focus on the ruling elite. Sometimes, a brief mention might appear in a chronicler's account of the Sultan's court, a passing reference to a handsome young page or a skilled musician. But these are fleeting, devoid of personal detail, offering little insight into your inner world or the complexities of your life. You are a type, a role, rather than a fully fleshed out individual in these records. One quirky tidbit, very occasionally, a male concubine who particularly excelled in poetry might have a few of his verses preserved in an anthology. But even then, his identity would often be reduced to a generic title like the palace scribe or the Sultan's favorite. Your story, therefore, is largely one of silence. You lived, you served, you experienced the heights of luxury and the depths of confinement. But your narrative remained largely unheard by the wider world, then as now. You are an unsung character in the grand opera of the Ottoman Empire, your existence contributing to the splendor, but your voice forever muted by the veil of history. Given the fleeting nature of your individual story, what we know about the lives of male concubines in the Ottoman Empire comes primarily from historians' limited sources. Our understanding is pieced together from fragmented records, often biased accounts, and the careful interpretation of what is and isn't said in official documents. It's like trying to reconstruct a complex mosaic when you only have a handful of scattered tiny pieces. Much of the information comes from court chronicles written by official historians whose primary purpose was to glorify the Sultan and his dynasty. These documents might mention the presence of male pages or servants in the Sultan's private chambers, or describe lavish entertainments where young men played instruments or danced. However, they rarely delve into the personal lives, emotions, or specific experiences of these individuals. Their existence is acknowledged, but their humanity often remains obscured. This kind of official historiography, focused on the elite, is a common feature of many historical periods, often leaving the lives of common people or marginalized groups largely undocumented. Another source is the reports of foreign ambassadors and travelers to the Ottoman court. These outsiders, often European, observed the customs and practices of the palace with a mix of fascination, judgment, and often misunderstanding. Their accounts can provide valuable glimpses into the organization of the harem, the roles of eunuchs, and the presence of male servants. However, their interpretations are filtered through their own cultural lenses, often colored by pre-existing biases or sensationalism, particularly when discussing topics related to sexuality or courtly life that differed from their own societal norms. You have to read between the lines, separating genuine observation from prejudiced conjecture. Historians still argue about the reliability of these foreign accounts, weighing their observational value against their inherent biases. Financial records and administrative documents from the palace treasury can also offer clues. These might detail expenditures for clothing, food, or allowances for various palace staff, sometimes differentiating between male and female residents. While not telling you about their feelings, these documents can give an idea of the number of individuals, their general living conditions, and their hierarchical standing based on the resources allocated to them. It's like trying to understand a family's life just by looking at their bank statements. You see what they spent money on, but not why. Archaeological findings and the study of palace architecture can also shed light on the physical spaces occupied by male concubines, providing context for their daily lives. The layout of their quarters, their proximity to the Sultan's chambers, and the design of common areas all contribute to our understanding of their existence. One quirky tidbit: some researchers have meticulously studied the detailed Ottoman miniature paintings depicting palace life, carefully analyzing the clothing, postures, and interactions of the figures to infer aspects of male concubines' lives, sometimes finding subtle gestures or arrangements that reveal more than written accounts. It's like being a detective, looking for clues in ancient artwork. Finally, and most rarely, there are occasional private letters or personal writings from individuals connected to the court. These are incredibly precious because they can offer a more intimate, less filtered perspective. However, such sources are exceedingly rare for male concubines, who were generally not in a position to produce or preserve such documents, or whose writings may not have survived the centuries. Ultimately, understanding your life as a male concubine requires careful, critical engagement with these limited, often indirect, sources. It's a painstaking process of piecing together fragments, always acknowledging the vast gaps in our knowledge and the inherent biases of the historical record. And so, after all the grandeur, the luxury, the endless rules, and the profound uncertainties, what remains are the echoes of your life. Your personal narrative, though largely unwritten and unheard, resonates softly within the grand halls of history, a poignant whisper from a bygone era. You were a thread in the rich, complex tapestry of the Ottoman Empire, a silent witness to its power, its splendor, and its human costs. You navigated a world that offered unparalleled material comforts alongside profound personal constraints. You ate from silver platters and wore silken robes, but your freedom was tethered, your fate dictated by imperial whim. You learned, you performed, you served, always under the watchful eye, always aware that your status was as fleeting as the Sultan's attention. Your artistry might have soothed an emperor, your presence might have brought him comfort, but your individual voice rarely left the confines of those palace walls. Consider the sensory details of your existence, the scent of rosewater and incense, the cool touch of marble, the rich taste of spiced pilaf, the intricate patterns on a hand-woven carpet. These were the textures of your daily life, the constant backdrop against which you played your part. You mastered the subtle language of the court, the unspoken cues, the hidden meanings. Becoming a master of discretion and a connoisseur of silence, you forged cautious alliances, understanding that survival often depended on mutual, unspoken trust. In a world where betrayal lurled around every corner, you witnessed the constant, quiet battles for influence, the desperate power plays that defined the highest echelons of the empire. You were a shadow in the halls of power, yet you saw, more than most, privy to the intimate moments and unguarded conversations of the most powerful men in the world. And then, if you were fortunate, came a different kind of life outside, a life of unexpected freedoms, but also daunting challenges. The quiet dignity of anonymity replaced the constant scrutiny, but so too did the struggle for basic economic survival. The vibrant social fabric of the outside world was perhaps less glamorous than the palace, but undeniably more real, more raw. The stigma of your past, though invisible, would likely follow you, a constant companion that shaped perceptions and limited your choices. Your story is a reminder of the countless, unnamed individuals who lived within the folds of grand historical narratives, their lives rich with experience, but often overlooked by chroniclers focused on kings and conquests. It is a testament to human adaptability, resilience, and the enduring search for meaning and connection. Even within the most unusual and restrictive circumstances, as the echoes of your life fade, we are left to ponder the true cost of luxury, the hidden price of proximity to power, and the complex interplay between constraint and comfort. Your whispers remind us that history is not just about battles and empires, but about the deeply personal, often poignant, experiences of individuals living through them. The air outside your window is still. Perhaps a gentle breeze stirs the leaves, carrying with it the quiet hum of the night. The stories of the past are like that breeze. They touch us lightly, remind us of lives lived long ago, and then gently fade, leaving us with a sense of wonder and perhaps a new perspective on our own journey. The vastness of history, like the night sky, holds countless untold stories, each a tiny star, flickering and waiting to be seen. As the final images of the Ottoman court recede, let yourself drift. knowing that the complexities and silent struggles of the past have now been laid bare. Rest well, knowing that every life, no matter how obscured by time, holds its own quiet power. Sweet dreams.